It's been an interesting offseason for the Las Vegas Aces. I mean, first there was the Kelsey Plum move, which was kind of the domino that kicked off WNBA free agency, where Plum heads to the Sparks. The Aces get back Jewel Lloyd. So sort of a one-for-one swap there as far as roster construction is concerned, even if they're losing one of the faces of the franchise. But since then, a few other players have departed Las Vegas. We know Sydney Colson, a bit player, but still a role player of importance in their championships, goes to the Indiana Fever, which was, a move that got a lot of reaction online because of Colson's personality and attachment to Aces fans. And now Tiffany Hayes has gone to the Golden State Valkyries. This is interesting for a few reasons. One, Hayes was the 6th Woman of the Year last year. Two, the Aces protected her in the expansion draft, and now she signs in free agency. So the Aces protected Hayes and not Kate Martin. Kate Martin winds up with the Valkyries, and now Hayes winds up with the Valkyries as well. Of course, there's a connection there with the coach, Natalie Nakase, who was on the staff of the Aces and is now the head coach of the Valkyries. And the Aces are doing all this without a general manager also. All of this is happening in the midst of them not having a general manager, which makes everything more interesting. And also, like I said, I think sometimes you just reach the end of a dynasty run where Becky Hammon called it. She said the core of the roster, or a lot of the roster, would change from year to year. So it's not like this was completely unexpected. Of course, Plum, is with Dearica Hamby in Los Angeles, who used to be on the Aces. Hayes now with Martin on the Valkyries. So none of this is completely shocking, right? But it is interesting, especially when you consider there's not a general manager, and especially when you consider it wasn't that long ago where the Aces would have been considered the destination franchise and the franchise you want to be on. And now maybe some of these players are going, it might be done. Might be done there. Now, Lloyd was happy to go to the Aces, and the Aces are still going to be a good team because they have Asia Wilson, Jackie Young, Jewel Lloyd, Chelsea Gray. Still a good squad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're falling to the depths of the league or anything, but they certainly don't feel like a dominant force, a back-to-back championship dominant force. They didn't feel like that last season, and it stands to reason, they could fall a little bit more this year. Because Kate Martin looks like a good player, right? And I wonder in retrospect if they regret not protecting her in the expansion draft, especially if they knew Hayes was going to be out the door. Now, the Hayes thing, she got paid a decent sum from the Valkyries. I think the Valkyries were like, we got to spend the money somewhere. Let's bring in somebody we know is going to have a good influence and maybe also who can thrive with a bigger role. Hayes averaged 9.5 points in 21.5 minutes last year. Shot well from the floor. Splits were really good, actually. 50% from field goal percentage, 40% from three. So maybe she also, shines in a bigger role. And Kelsey Plum, I don't know if she was as much saying this is the end of the run with the Aces, or I just need to turn the page on my career and get a fresh start. Nonetheless, it's not the Connecticut Sun situation, but it's intriguing. And, Sydney Colson and Becky Hammon shared an embrace at Athletes Unlimited, where right now Colson is playing. You could see this was captured on TikTok or something, or Instagram. It looks like TikTok. Let me turn the music off so I'll get nailed there. Yeah, you can see the account right there. The caption is wrong. She wasn't traded from the Aces to the Fever, but you get the point. And, obviously no hard feelings here. This is an embrace of people who care about one another. And that was a long one there. And same goes for with Hammond. So I'm not saying all these players are like, get me out of here. Don't get me wrong. I'm not misconstruing it, not sensationalizing it, nothing like that. But I do think it could be an indication of where the franchise stands right now. And of course, it's also good for the other teams. I mean, Colson to the Fever is not some game-changing move, but it does help them. It does give them an option in non-Caitlin Clark minutes. It does give them a way to give teams a different look with Caitlin Clark for spot minutes. Remember when Erica Wheeler and Caitlin Clark played together a little bit and Caitlin moved off the ball? I mean, that's things you can do. It gives them another perimeter defensive option, an on-ball defender option, another shooter, and a winner, and a vet in the locker room. And then as far as Hayes to the Valkyries, I just touched on it, but I think, the two aces kind of feel like the faces of the Valkyries. I mean, Kate Martin was already the one who was going to move the merch and the like, but Hayes, she's at Unrivaled right now. She's a good player. Good player. And it doesn't turn the Valkyries into contenders or anything. They are a long ways away from that, right? Like, this is still an expansion franchise. But it goes to show you that they're probably going to be looked at, I think, as a destination franchise going forward. They got one of those, swanky facilities. And, they needed to give people a reason to care and watch. Which is probably, I think I saw the deal was in like the 200,000 range, like a good amount for Hayes. And by the way, it says something that the person who was coaching these players speaks so highly of them. So you have that sign off as well. So there's just a lot of moving parts to a deal like this where Oracle's all these moves, in succession, where on the surface it's like, okay, Hayes to the Valkyries, that's cool. Or Colson to the Fever, that's cool. Plum to the Sparks, that was pretty significant, right? But you add them all together and you see all the different spinoffs and how it affects every single team. I think overall they could have some influence on how next season plays out. And then it will be fascinating to see where the Aces go from here and how much runway they have left on the treads, because Asia Wilson's smack dab in her prime. Jewel Lloyd is getting a fresh start, just like Kelsey Plum is getting a fresh start. So she probably has a chip on her shoulder. Jackie Young is one of my favorite players in the league. I think Chelsea Gray, her defense is a bit of a problem. Her speed up and down the floor, a bit of a problem at this phase in her career that I thought they struggled to defend in the backcourt last year. But they still have, Gray is still a great floor general and an experienced, polished player. So the Aces are absolutely a playoff team, right? Like, they're absolutely a playoff team, but it feels a ways away from when they were a burgeoning dynasty. And that script has flipped over to the Fever as the it team in the WNBA, while the Valkyries are looking to be that one day in the future.